Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning from where you're checking in from. And thank you for tuning in today. I'm Susanna Pollack, President of Games for Change, and we are pleased to welcome you to our latest installment of the Games for Change Industry Circle Google Hangout. Today we're here with Schell Games, who's going to be presented by Jesse Schell, CEO and founder, and a game creator extraordinaire of his own right. So we're going to start off with Jesse speaking for about a half an hour, and at 3:30 we're going to start a Q&A. You can submit questions here by using the Q&A button on the left of your screen, or you can Twitter using hashtag G4C Industry. And we have people monitoring Twitter, and we'll make sure that your questions are put in a queue to ask Jesse. But first, a little bit about the Industry Circle, if you haven't joined us before. The Games for Change Industry Circle aims to acknowledge the achievements and challenges that the growing social impact game sector has. We're recognizing some of the leaders, companies and entrepreneurs that have emerged as industry leaders, and believe by identifying and sharing best practices, we can help others inspire and invite others to forge new paths into this growing sector. The 2015 Industry Circle included companies Cognito and Amplify, BrainPop, Global Gaming Initiative, Glass Lab, Filament Games, and of course, Schell Games. For those of you who don't know, Schell Games is a full-service game design and development company. It's in Pittsburgh and was founded in 2002. Schell makes transformational games, which you'll hear about today, games that change people for the better. Their really impressive portfolio includes mobile, VR, online, console, casual, and social games, and even theme park attractions and connected toys. Jesse, the founder of Schell Games, has been a huge part of our community since the beginning, and we're grateful that he has continued to be an important figure and helping us along. He's been teaching at Carnegie Mellon's Entertainment Technology Center since 2002. He's worked at Disney's VR studio, and as far as I understand, was even in a mime circus, which I don't think he's talking about today, but who knows. So we're so excited to have you here, Jesse. He's about to start. And welcome. Enjoy.
All right. Thanks very much, Susanna. So, hey, everybody. How everything's good out in internet land. So what I was going to do today was, after that great introduction, I don't need to tell you too much about Schell Games. We make a lot of different games. We're really into educational and transformational games, and we have about 100 people making them here in Pittsburgh. What I was going to do today was show you some footage from some of our recent projects and just sort of show you some of the sorts of things we've been working on. So I'm going to show us 5 different projects today. Just sort of talk you through them, and then we'll open up for questions to see which ones people are interested in talking about. So let me pop into the excitement of screen share mode here. Boop. All right, so sharing some screens. So I'm going to just roll a little footage from our Lexica project, which some people may have heard of, some people may not have heard of. This is definitely the biggest project that I've ever worked on, and I think it's the biggest educational game that's ever been made. This was a project Schell Games did with Amplify Learning, and the goal was to make a game that would turn junior high students into lifelong readers. And this was the question: could an action video game get junior high students to become lifelong readers? Because we know there's a big problem where most young kids read for pleasure somewhat, but a lot of kids at junior high, they just sort of fall off of it, and either they become lifelong readers or they don't. And so the goal was, can we push kids to become readers? And so this game is really unusual. As you see in some of the footage here, we're showing there is actually some in-game text, and more than just some. There are over 300 complete books in the text in an e-reader in this action game. So the premise of the game is that there's this magical library where the souls of all books are kept, and it is under threat. It's under some danger from folks who maybe they don't really believe that everyone should be able to read. And part of what's really interesting with Lexica is it has a lot of integrated games into it. We hesitate to call them mini games. You know, you're seeing some of them here, Inkblot, Master Swords, because these games are all kind of deep on their own. Each one of these is about pushing on a specific aspect of grammar or spelling or vocabulary, so that you play these sort of smaller games to sort of, you know, those sort of work on your chops for those aspects, and then you get back into the main game, which is kind of an RPG. Now, this part we're showing here is something we call scriptus. There's a huge correlation between students who write and students who read. If you can get students writing, they're very likely to become readers. And so based on that research, we made this really interesting part of the experience where students can build their own worlds, kind of Minecraft style, but using all of the props from the Lexica game. And then having done that, they can then make interactive branching narratives. And this is something kids get pretty excited about because they've seldom had the opportunity to make their own sort of interactive choose your own adventure video game worlds, and this lets them do that and then share those worlds with their other classmates. One of the things that's really unusual about Lexica, Amplify's mission was not to just pop out more games into the consumer space, but very much to design games for the school space. Which I think that part's a little, that's just, I don't think no one had really taken that approach before in terms of having games that were strictly designed for the school space this way. And we've been thrilled with this game. It's been testing really well. We've been really pleased with the testing we've seen, the excitement and the enthusiasm that we're getting from both teachers and students. But it's in an interesting place right now because Amplify was very much funded by News Corp. News Corp, originally games were part of their plan, but their big plan was to basically build whole curricula that they were going to deliver to schools. After working on this for a few years, they decided, wow, this business is tougher than we thought. They decided they were going to back off on it, which kind of left everything in limbo. So what's happened now is the Amplify Learning has been spun out as its own company, and it's kind of trying to figure out its strategic direction going forward. So right now, if you're a teacher or if you're part of a school, you can contact Amplify and get access to these games. But other than that, that's the only way you can get access to them right now. Amplify is having a lot of discussion about how to get these into the consumer space. So we're all waiting for, hopefully later this year, maybe some of that will happen, but we're not sure yet. But that's been an absolutely thrilling experience for us, creating AAA games for education in the tablet environment. It was pretty exciting. So I was going to switch to another one right now. I'm going to show you one of our little bit of change of pace. This is sort of Daniel Tiger game that we just recently released about a week ago. So you'll see this right here. So we've done a number of these Daniel Tiger games mainly for the web, working with the Fred Rogers company. And this one's a little different. This one is called Stop and Go Potty. Now it's really like here we are making a potty training game for mobile. It seems like kind of a strange thing to do. I'll tell you the logic by which we got to this game. The way we got there was very much talking to the Fred Rogers company. We'd done a number of web games for them, and we said, you know, we'd really like to do an app. And they said, well, we don't really need an app right now. And we said, yeah, but we think we could do a great app, and what if we funded the app? And they said, well, that sounds kind of interesting. Let's talk about it. And as we talked about trying to figure out what app to do, we asked them what episodes of the show, of the Daniel Tiger show, are most popular. And an interesting fact is right now, about 2/3 of all viewing for preschoolers happens not on television, but it happens on mobile. And the great part about that is you know exactly what episodes people are watching. So the most popular episode was the potty training episode. We looked out in the marketplace, like, hey, how are potty training apps doing? We saw there were some out there, but not a lot of them. And the ones that are out there didn't seem too great. So we thought this was a real opportunity. As we talked to parents and we talked to young kids, there seemed to be some appeal. So we put it together, and so far it's done really well. So you can see it's kind of an unusual game. because you start playing with Daniel. So we were playing with blocks there, and then periodically Daniel or Katerina, of the different characters, they need to use the bathroom. And the whole message of it, you know, you're not hearing the audio right now, but there's a lot of message that comes through in terms of songs that help you kind of remember what you're supposed to do. And the big message for young kids is, hey, when you have to go, you should stop what you're doing and go right away. And then we go through the steps. You see, Daniel, the steps of using the toilet. Now we're going to do the steps of washing your hands here. And this is a very interactive part where the kids get to help. They turn the water on and off. They get to use the towel and dry Daniel's hands. And then once it's all done, Daniel will go back and he'll return to playtime, and everything will be just where it was. Because that's one of the things that some of the researchers found, is that part of the reason kids don't want to go is they're like, oh, this is going to end my playtime, and like, no, you know what? You can come back and do what you're doing. You should go right away. And it's funny here, this business of using the dump truck in Daniel, we got that from Fred Rogers himself when he would talk to young children about kind of bathroom activities. He would kind of make this analogy with a dump truck. So you'll see we have games here that are about kind of, even this one, we're playing with Baby Margaret. We have the ring game, which is a common thing you might play with a baby with, but involves kind of dumping things out. So it's kind of subtle. There's also a second game where we play with this sort of fun water wall. So after you play with Baby Margaret for a while, eventually there's this kind of diaper changing moment. So here you see, here's Baby Margaret. She needs her diaper changed. This gives us an opportunity here to talk about, you know, there's a big difference between being a baby and being older. Now, it's important to remember Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood is a show aimed at kids ages 2 to 5. And this app in particular is aimed at kids ages 2 and 3 who are going to be kind of in that transitional period when it comes to transitioning from diapers into being able to use the bathroom by themselves. So we like the idea that you could be helpful, helping to change the diaper, and you could also underline the difference between, you know, big kids and little kids. So here you see the little water wall game. It's just a very fun, creative game where water flows around and you can sort of play with these different things. And this is the one where this is the game where eventually Katerina ends up needing to use the restroom. So this has been an interesting game to make. We've been really pleased at the reception in the App Store. The game spent some time at #1 in kids and #1 in education. And it's definitely been getting a lot of downloads and some good reception. So we've been pretty excited about this, even though it's kind of a simple and unusual app. So I'll switch it out to a different one now, kind of just give a little change of pace. Going to change over to, this is something a little different. This is a thing called Happy Atoms. You can see right there, there's this box for Happy Atoms. This is very much a chemistry game that was initiated very much at Schell Games, but we're teaming up with Thames and Cosmos in order to produce it. You can see it involves these very physical pieces that involve rubber and plastic and magnets. We came up with a way to show how atoms form into molecules. And then once you form them, you take out your app, it does a visual analysis, it identifies what molecule you've created, and then you can kind of check out information about the molecule just by kind of looking at it and get all kinds of various facts about it. We have, as it says there, detailed information on 120, and you can identify 12,000 different ones. And we're pretty excited about Happy Atoms. I'm very pleased to say we just showed this at Toy Fair, and we got a really good reception for Happy Atoms. It got a Best of Toy Fair award, which was really exciting for us. The plan for this product right now, it's had an interesting history. This started as a thing I was just kind of developing on my own in my basement. At some point, we started taking it a little more seriously at Schell Games. We applied for a grant from the IES, the Department of Education. We got that grant, which really helped us move it along, helped it move the software and the hardware development. We are going to be doing an Indiegogo campaign for the full development of it starting in mid-April. And if you're interested in that, if you're interested in kind of how can I get my hands on this thing and be one of the first to try it out, you can sign up right now. If you go to happyatoms.com, you can sign up and you'll be one of the first to be able to pre-order it. So we'll be doing that campaign, and then this fall we plan to have the product actually finished and released to the public. We don't have the price set yet, but we're hoping to know that within a month. We'll certainly have it nailed down before the campaign starts. So let's see. So I want to show two more different projects. One of them is an installation-based project. So let me just switch back to the screen share here, and I'll show you this one. So here's from a news report about this project. This is down at the Children's Museum of Houston. It's kind of this sort of fun stylized showing how this thing works. The notion of it is we have kids who come to the museum get to be secret agents, and they go all over the museum interacting with various constructs, some of them physical, some of them more virtual, and solving these sort of secret agent puzzles. It's very much a logic-oriented game that has a mixture of kind of logic puzzles and a lot of physical activity. You can see right here there's this sort of laser maze that's integrated into it. There are 6 different missions that the kids can go on. Each mission comes with sort of a booklet that kind of helps guide you through the mission as you do these physical things. And also you get a cool gadget. Some of them have binoculars, and some of them have ultraviolet lights, and you can see there's a kid with a magnifier. And this has been really, really well received down there. The problem we were trying to solve is children's museums often have a problem where kids turn about 7 years old and they're not sure a children's museum is the right thing for them anymore. They feel like, wow, maybe I'm too old, maybe I shouldn't be here anymore. And they start to tune out and not want to show up. And the Houston Children's Museum asked if we could work with them to develop some content for 8 to 12-year-olds. And we came up with this secret agent concept where everything's kind of hidden in plain sight. And what's cool about it is it's an extra upcharge. It's like a separate ticket within the museum. And what's neat about that is you'll see these older kids kind of going through, and they're unlocking things. They're going in hidden doors. There are parts of the museum that only they are allowed to go to. And it gives them a lot of status, makes them feel very important, very excited. They get to do something the younger kids can't do, and then the younger kids see it, and they're kind of aspiring to it. And that's been going really well. It was a tricky project because it had both physical and digital aspects to it. Play testing it was pretty tricky, but it's gone really well, and we're hoping that it's the first of many museum installations like this that we're able to do. The last game I want to show you today is Water Bears VR. Now, Water Bears started out as an iPad game that we had. Well, actually, I'll start showing you the video, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the history of it. Water Bears started out actually as a project at Carnegie Mellon University, all about systems thinking. And Schell Games got interested in it, acquired it from the students at the university, and we made an iPad version that got some awards and was pretty successful. And then when we started working with VR, we've been doing a lot of virtual reality. We were looking for something we could do with the Vive platform, which allows you to walk around. And you can see here, this now allows you to sort of build these pipe structures, with your hands. And the whole concept of it is you're trying to solve these sort of fluid-based color change puzzles by routing these pipes and color changing systems so that you can get water to these cute little water bear characters. And we've been really pleased at how it's worked out as kind of a virtual reality experience. It's the first one that we're launching on the Vive. If you have a Vive, it's out now. You can purchase it for $9.99 right in the Steam store. And that's been pretty exciting for us because we really believe that right now virtual reality seems very new. It's like no one seems sure, is this going to be successful or not successful. We're very confident that it's going to be incredibly successful in the entertainment space, and that it's incredibly powerful as an educational and transformational tool. So Water Bears is our first game that kind of slants towards education in the virtual reality space. We have others that are pure entertainment. We've had a lot of success with an entertainment game called I Expect You to Die, which is for the Oculus. But Water Bears is our first educational one, and we hope it's the first of many. Anyway, so that's my rundown of some of the things we've been working on recently. So if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to open it up for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Jesse. That was great. For all of the folks tuned in, you can submit your questions using the Q&A app on Google Hangout, which is, if you look at the left-hand side of your screen, there's a little Q&A bubble, and that'll open up a column on the right for you to enter in questions. So we are monitoring those questions as they come in. We are also looking at Twitter. We're using hashtag G4C Industry on Twitter. And so if you are tuned in, well, feel free to submit questions that way. My name is Sarah Cornish, and I'm a director of projects at Games for Change. So I will be helping moderate this live question and answer session with Jesse. So, Jesse, our very first question is from Michael Lynch. And Michael asks, how many projects do you work on at one time? Seems like there is so much going on.
Right, it's a great question. I would say typically we're working on between 8 and 12 projects at a time, which might sound like a lot, but there are 100 of us. Some of the projects are big. Lexica, for example, was a really big project. I think at one point we had 45 people working on it. And but then we have other projects that are small, which is 2 or 3 people. We realized that in terms of the way our studio works, if we could manage to do lots of simultaneous projects and manage that well, that would be a meaningful competitive advantage for us. And so we focused on that, and it's been going pretty well. So we're pretty used to that, doing between 8 and 12. Sometimes it goes a little higher, when that gets a little hairy when it's more than that, but that's about how many.
Okay, great. Next question. Can you talk a little bit about the revenue model, especially for Lexica, asks Mark Rosa.
Yeah.
How did you get funding? What was that process like?
Great question. From our point of view, we were very much just hired to develop Lexica. The revenue model for Lexica, the plan had been very much to sell curricula to schools, sell complete math, English language arts curricula to schools, and that the games would be included if the schools purchased the curriculum. That was the original business model, but since then, as I mentioned, Amplified decided, like, okay, they're going to pivot, they're going to change this model, and now they're kind of figuring out what they want to do. They're continuing to sell in the schools, but now they're trying to figure out the right way to also bring high-quality educational games directly to consumers. And so I don't know if they have that all worked out just yet, but initially the model had been sell this stuff directly to schools, and I guess, you know, and as many people have found, that is a tough path to go down.
Great, and I'd like to add to that, Jesse. I'm curious, you know, hearing about how you're doing some crowdfunding for Happy Atoms. I saw that you received an SBIR grant for that project as well. Can you talk a little bit about other funding models that you guys have explored?
We explore all kinds of funding models because there's, you know, different projects want different kinds of funding. Our studio is a little unusual because we don't have investors like some studios do. We're very much, you know, a bootstrap studio, as they say. Our traditional model has been we find projects we can do as work for hire projects or partnership projects, try and get those projects to be a little bit profitable, and then use the profits to invest in our own IP. And so we've been doing that kind of for quite some time, but it means we have a lot of variety. We have crowdfunded projects, which we're going to do, I guess Happy Atoms will be our 4th crowdfunded project. We've also, Puzzle Clubhouse was crowdfunded, Orion Trail was a crowdfunded project that we did. So we've had some success with crowdfunding, but also we have projects that have had grant support. Happy Atoms, we're going to do some crowdfunding, and it's had some grant support as well. We have other ones where we just kind of put our savings in to try and invest in a game. The Daniel Tiger Stop and Go Potty was very much one of those where we're just doing our own investment on it. And then other ones that are just pure work for hire. So we have a big mixture of business models because you know, being flexible that way really opens up the possibilities for what you can do.
Great, thank you. So our next question is from Marina Vasileva, and she asks, this is an interesting one, what do you think about the digitalization of old forgotten, quote unquote, kids games? So I think of Zumbinis and some others that we've seen get sort of a redesign. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's when you've got, a lot of times we have things that are really great and that get kind of left behind and forgotten, and then when those can get brought back and sort of given new life breathed into them, I think it can be very exciting, but it is very challenging because often what made a thing great in the old days had a lot to do with the context that it was in, and you're now in a new context that's very different. And so I think there's a lot of challenges to it. I think part of the key is if you're going to work on projects like that, you can't be blinded by the nostalgia. You have to kind of take a serious look about what is this really going to mean to people now, and does it have value now at this time? I mean, having the nostalgia can be a real benefit because, particularly if you're talking about kids' properties, if adults have fond memories of this as a child, they may want to bring it to their kids, which can give you a huge advantage. I think with the Daniel Tiger, we're experiencing a lot of that. Daniel Tiger, of course, very much based on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood of Make-Believe, but now brought into animated form. And parents really resonate with, they're glad to sort of see these characters come back and be able to kind of go into the Neighborhood of Make-Believe again. But you see it's not exactly as it was. It's a very different adaptation of that world. So it's interesting, but not to be taken lightly.
Great, thank you. So we've had a couple of questions flow in about how Schell Games works with subject matter experts and researchers. Mm-hmm. So Shasha Milliard asks, do you have any in-house subject matter experts or instructional designers that you hire for projects? Can you talk a little bit about how you work with researchers and educational advisors?
Absolutely. If you're going to work on educational and transformational games, being able to work well and wisely with subject matter experts and educational advisors is critical. I think it's one of the things that keeps a lot of entertainment game developers out of the educational space, is they don't know how to do that. They're not comfortable with it. One of the things we recognize, we go into it saying, look, we don't know everything about everything. How could we? How could we be experts on chemistry and reading and preschool psychology and all these things? It's not possible. So what we said is we should become experts on how to work with people who are experts on these topics and work with them to be able to create great games. So we've focused a lot on what are those best practices. And a big part of it is early on in the project, you have to spend some time working with the subject matter experts so that you can together get on the same page. You need to be able to get information out of them about what are the things that are most important. You can't go to them and say, what should the game design be? They don't know. They're not game design experts. But they do know what is most important from an educational point of view, and they often know here are the best practices for getting those elements across. So we get into a lot of conversations about what's important and why. And okay, given that that's important, what do you think are the best techniques for getting people to understand it? And then we look at, well, how can those be adapted into games? And it means we have to spend time explaining the nature of game design and development to them about what is and isn't possible. It's not at all uncommon for subject matter experts to come in with a lot of their own ideas about what the game should be, which often are not very, they're often not great ideas because they're not game designers. And so learning to work with them to talk to kind of, okay, they have an idea for the game, and it might not be a great idea, but they have a great intention. There's something behind it that is really, that has real value, and being able to have the conversation, like what is it that gets you excited about that, and then to help them develop that into something that works, it only takes a lot of practice. Very soon we're going to be publishing something we call the Transformational Games Field Guide. Sabrina Solba, who's one of our senior designers here at Schell Games, has been working on this. It's basically an encapsulation of the methods we've been using to work with subject matter experts to make great transformational games. We have a set of methods we've been using, and we're very eager to publish that. I think that's going to be coming out this summer.
Okay, terrific. And where do you find the researchers you use for development of your games?
Yeah, right, good question. So now we do have some researchers in the studio. We have, for example, a full-time, Brooke Morrill is a full-time educational researcher. Having her here kind of consulting on a lot of projects has been very, very helpful. She's been especially helpful when it comes to assessing different kinds of games and also helping us pursue certain grant opportunities. But she has expertise there. Then we have other designers who've just been really passionate about using games for education, and they've become very, very good and very skilled at kind of figuring out the right ways to work with subject matter experts. But where we get subject matter experts, some of them are internal. Our director of Happy Atoms, for example, he's from our design department, happens to have a degree in chemistry. He ended up being a perfect fit for that project. But even then, his degree in chemistry is not quite enough. We found an external subject matter expert who we contracted with, who has a PhD in chemistry and specializes in education, who we ended up working with. So sometimes the experts come from inside, sometimes they come from a partner or a client, like the Fred Rogers Company. They have just incredible people on staff who know all about preschool psychology. And then other times we have to go and find somebody and bring them on as an expert. It's different in each project.
Great. I'll let you catch your breath for a second there. So the next question is from Sasha Goto, and she asks, Jesse, how much of your time do you personally spend playing games? Either for research or for more personal recreational purposes.
Yeah, I wish I could spend more time playing games. I mean, keeping in mind the fact that we're doing 12 games at a time here, and it's not uncommon for us to maybe launch as many as 20 games in a year. I spend plenty of time just playing our games. It can be hard for me to get caught up with that. A lot of my game playing ends up being research oriented. I want to see what games are out in the world. And often I'm playing them just enough that I can kind of understand what they are and what they're about, what's new and sort of what's different. When I do play games for recreation, it often ends up being opportunities to connect with my family a bit. You know, games that that they're going to be interested in, or games with family and friends. Because game playing it takes some time.
Great, thank you. And okay, so a couple of sort of specific questions about projects that you've worked on at Schell.
Yeah.
So regarding Lexica, at the handle Bobby Locks on Twitter, or Rock Lobster, asks, does Lexica share technology with interactive fiction?
Share technology with what?
Interactive fiction.
Yes, very much. We looked at the question since particularly the scriptus aspect of Lexica was an interactive fiction generation engine, and the fact that Lexica itself requires so much reading, just playing through the game, there's an intense amount of reading that the kids go through in order to play the game. We ended up developing our own internal interactive fiction engine for this. We started out trying to use an off-the-shelf one. We had a lot of trouble integrating it in a way that was satisfactory to us. We ended up making our own internal interactive fiction system. And so, yeah, very much. We looked closely at sort of the world of interactive fiction. Lexica's is fairly simple because it is simple and branching. There's no text parsing. We don't have we don't have an old style text parser as part of the commands, but still all the branching gets very complicated to manage. And so we needed to develop a system to do that.
Gotcha, great. We have Heidi McDonald, who's on Twitter at DeathBow. And Heidi, I'm sure she says hello. Heidi asks, what's next for I Expect You to Die? That people keep asking her.
Oh, okay, right. So I Expect You to Die, which has been a very successful VR entertainment game, which is, you can try it out now on Oculus Share if you have a DK2 or an Oculus Rift system. The current plan is we want to bring that out as a full title. We don't know the exact date yet. We're kind of going back and forth about that, but it will certainly be coming out in 2016. We know that much. We don't know exactly when, but the plan very much is to add more levels, more puzzles to it, so that we can have sort of a launchable game that has a decent amount of content in it. Everybody's working pretty hard on it. We're going to be showing a little more of it at GDC, so that'll be kind of mid-March. So we'll be kind of giving a sneak peek of some of what we're working on there. But we're pretty excited about it, and it's nice. It's gotten some awards. It's been getting some good reception. So we're all very excited to move it forward.
Great. So are we. Jesse, do you have a favorite platform? Asks Sasha Goto again. Do you prefer to create mobile games, console games, computer games, or maybe VR?
Boy, I like all kinds of platforms. At the moment, I have to admit, I am really, really excited about VR. I have a long history with VR. I started developing it in 1992 at Carnegie Mellon, and then I was at the Disney Virtual Reality Studios all through the 90s and into the 2000s. And then at Carnegie Mellon, when I returned and started teaching there, I've been teaching the Building Virtual Worlds course there for the last 14 years. And so there's like being able to finally take everything of the excitement of being in virtual reality and put it into consumer product is very exciting for me. So I think at the moment, that's the platform I think I get the most jazzed about, but really it changes all the time. I mean, I like everything from kind of making board games to mobile games. Just we're making a game for Twitch right now, an entertainment game for Twitch. There's so many different types of games, and I personally really like variety.
So cool. Sounds great. Well, I'll have to look out for that Twitch game. So we have a question from Alfredo Abaranga, and he asks, how do you balance the fun and seriousness of your games, especially, I would say, in making games for learning?
Yeah, balancing fun and seriousness is an interesting question. So first you've got to understand the point and purpose of both fun and seriousness. You know, and I guess, and it all depends on what one means by seriousness, right? Some people say, so for example, I've never liked the phrase serious games. That became a very popular phrase. I've never liked that because it implies that if you have a good time playing the game, something went wrong. And people say, well, we don't mean that. We don't mean that everyone who plays the game should be serious and not have any enjoyment. What we mean is that there's a serious purpose, and the people who created were very serious about what they were doing. And personally, again, I find that insulting to people who create entertainment. People who create great drama and great entertainment, they're very serious about what they're doing. So I've always found that confusing. I actually had someone approach me once about wanting to create a game that would teach you to be a better comedian. Is that a serious game? Clearly something's wrong with that term, if like a game about comedy is a serious game. Which is why we like to use the term transformational games, because the goal of the game is not to be serious. The goal of the game is to change a person. And we like to focus on that because the most important question when you develop these games is, what is the change I am trying to make in the player? So in the terms of the question of when to be fun, when to be serious, it's an interesting question. We're working on a medical game right now, a game that's designed to train doctors in emergency rooms about getting better at making certain kinds of diagnoses. And this is a very serious topic. But we've gotten, working with our subject matter experts, they've been very clear that if the game is too serious, the doctors are not going to have interest in it. It'll just seem like more work to them. So we're working on a way to make this game a little more fun, a little more exciting, a little more adventurous, a little more lighthearted, so that they'll pay attention to it. But then at the same time, we've got to make sure that we have the right transformational infrastructure. So I think the key to figuring out when to be fun and when to be serious is what's going to create the most engagement and what's going to make the most, what's really going to get people to change when they play a game.
Great. Thank you. We have a question. They just keep coming. We have a question from Winston W. And Winston asks, what are some obstacles in making games that improve learning? So I would say if you could talk a little bit about some of the learning objectives you've had for games that Schell has designed, and what have been some barriers to realizing them.
Yeah, so there's a lot of obstacles. I mean, one of the biggest obstacles often is figuring out what really works. Whenever you're trying to make an educational transformational game, it's because the old method of doing that has problems, right? If you decide, hey, we should make a game about algebra, well, why? If the existing system of teaching algebra is already perfect, you'd be crazy to spend your time making a game. And if it's not perfect, well, what exactly needs improvement? And is a game the best way to bring about that improvement? And I think one of the biggest obstacles is we don't always know. We don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And there are some things that you can't know whether it's going to work until you've actually built a significant piece of it and tried it out. And I think that's often a big obstacle. But really the biggest obstacle is funding. We don't have clear and well-established markets for these types of games. It's great when you've got somebody who maybe they have a humanitarian mission and they want to make this game and give it away for free. That's great. That just makes your life really simple. But when you're going to try and make a business out of it, it's very easy for people to get unrealistic about what people will and won't pay for. You'd think, for example, that making great educational games for 10-year-olds would be something that parents would be willing to pay for great educational games for 10-year-olds. But wow, so far in the market, we haven't seen a lot of evidence that that is the case. We see lots of evidence that parents are willing to pay for great games for preschoolers. And this seems to often be fueled by concerns from the parents that they want to make sure their kids are ready for school. So they're very focused on that. But when you talk about older demographics, 10 to 12, high school, it can be easy to convince yourself that, oh, my game is so great, definitely people will buy it. But often it's not the case. And so getting funding in order to make games, especially great games, because you're competing, often when you're making these games, you're trying to compete with entertainment products. So, like, what are you going to do to make your game more interesting than Minecraft? You get into kind of a tough space if you're working with small budgets and trying to make a difference. So it requires being really creative and really honest with yourself about what is and isn't working.
Thank you. Great answer. So we've got 3 more questions for Jesse, and then we're gonna let him go and then drink a glass of water and take a nap, hopefully. So the first of our last 3 questions is from Michael Lynch, and Michael asks, what is the most important metric that you track on your games, and how do you use it? Many people talk about new users and returning users. Are educational games different?
Oh man, it is different on every game. We've had games where the most important thing is to get it into as many hands as possible, in which case all we care about is downloads. We have games where we have evidence that the longer they play it, the bigger a difference it makes, in which case we're measuring sort of retention and length of play. And we have other games, for example, we did this game Play Forward working with Yale University, where the most important thing is, does this make a difference in the lives of the players? This is a game designed to reduce the incidence of HIV in inner city teenagers. And how are you going to know? You can't just tell from having them play. So we're doing this long-term study where we had kids play it, and then we're observing their lives over the next 2 years to see, did this actually change the circumstances of their lives at all compared to a control group? So I can't say there's one most important metric. It depends case by case, game by game, what's most important.
Sounds good. All right. Bobby Locks on Twitter asks, is Schell Games as a company growing, shrinking, or just about stable? So what is the state of Schell?
Yeah, we've had fairly steady, we've been at it 14 years now. We've had fairly steady growth. We started with just a handful of us, maybe 5 of us, and now we've grown up to be about 100 staff. We've been fairly stable. We kind of go through these places of growth and then a little plateau and then some growth. Blessedly, we've never had any shrinking. That hasn't happened to us yet. So we're kind of in a plateau stage right now, being at about 100 folks, but it seems very possible we may be entering another growth phase, particularly if virtual reality takes off the way it looks like it might, because we've having about 5 titles out there, we're getting a lot of interest from people, and we may find ourselves growing a little bit then. So that's how it is right now, but we'll see. We never have growth targets. We always are very organic about growth.
Sounds good. Okay, so final question from Sasha. What is the one game that you would love to create?
Oh, one game? Finally, I had to pick one game? Are you kidding?
One of those ideas that you've gotten from a notebook somewhere.
Oh man, there's just so many. It used to be I would say Happy Atoms, but now we're making that. So that's amazing. I'm going to give you 2 different answers. One day I want to make a game that makes anybody who plays it intuitively understand the nature of relativity. Because relativity is one of these ideas that's incredibly important and very difficult for people to comprehend. And I really believe we could make a game that would make it very, very natural and intuitive. So there's my transformational game answer, but I'll give you an entertainment game answer as well. There's a game that we worked on for quite some time in sort of prototype phase that was a game all about living inside the mind of a character and working with their emotions. When people saw the movie Inside Out, we all couldn't believe it when Inside Out came out because it was very similar to the kind of nature of the game that we had been creating. But we have this notion of the game's title was Ordinary because it was about this person going around doing their ordinary life, but you had to kind of manage. We had this puzzle game that involved managing all of their emotions, and I keep coming back to wanting to really finish and create that game. We started working on it well before the indie movement had showed up, and now I think we could actually get some traction with it. So there's a couple answers for you. Oh, I've lost your audio there, so I hope we're good.
Oh, just any final words? That was the last question. So any final words before I close?
No, I guess I'd say 2 quick things. Again, I'm really pushing the Happy Atoms thing. Anyone who's interested in that, just go to happyatoms.com, and we'd love to have you sign up. We'd be very eager to get feedback from people, get support from people. That would be absolutely great. And people who are interested and kind of have questions about anything at all, they're certainly welcome to email me. The best way to get my information, just go to jesseschell.com, and there's lots of information there of all kinds, and you're welcome to drop me a line.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jesse. That was terrific. Great learning, and hopefully a useful conversation for everyone who was tuned in. Thank you to our viewers. If you still have a couple of questions and want some answers from Jesse, feel free to submit them on the Google Hangout page. You can write them into the comment section, and we'll make sure Jesse gets those. So again, thanks for your time. Wanted to plug a couple of upcoming Games for Change events while I've got you still tuned in. In April, we have our 2nd Games and Media Summit. And so this is part of the Tribeca Film Festival. It's happening in New York City on April 18th. So we encourage both, if you're local in New York or not local, this is going to be a great day-long event exploring emerging technologies and new games and platforms that have potential for social impact and learning. That's going to be a fun one. And then Jesse's actually going to be speaking at the 13th Annual Games for Change Festival, which is happening in June this year. So that's June 23rd and 24th. We're super excited to give Jesse a stage again, and hope to see you all there. You can get more information on the Games for Change website about both events at gamesforchange.org. So again, thank you, Jesse, for participating today in this Games for Change Industry Circle Google webinar, and we hope to see you all in the future. So
thank you.
thank you. All right, bye.